Argo,
We
and Griff is somewhere else.
we will get Ryan Dinwiddie one day, probably.
Well, we probably will get him one day. We'll see. But for now, first of all, we're back. The Canadian Football League has been back for a little while. We took a little while longer to get it going. I don't know whether, David, it's the simple fact that the excitement here in Toronto is as usual tempered, but with the situation and what we've got going on in our community, it may be a little more tempered even than normal. I don't know what you think about where we sit today with the Argos, the fans, and all that stuff. How would you summarize?
Yeah, I think expectations are being tempered to a degree. I do know that it's a different type of season, right? There's a lot of unknowns. I think given the fact that we don't know how they're gonna handle the fact that they're not going to be at home for a bit, they're in a new surroundings. Well, not new surroundings, but in familiar surroundings for a lot longer than expected, right? And
so those surroundings that they don't normally have during the regular season, have spent a lot of training camps at, so it's not new in that sense, but it is new when you talk about the regular season.
Exactly. Right. Like these I think in a lot of ways, a lot of the people within the organization are probably sick of hearing about, how are they going to handle the changes and all the stuff that's going to come with them not being at home. I think that stuff has weighed on them quite a bit. If we're being honest, I'm sure that the good thing is that they're in a position right now where they can be underestimated, and I think they are being underestimated. But they understand why. You look at how their season went last year. They didn't have a great season. So until you prove that you're back to that quality that they think they should be at, then they're gonna have to show. It's gonna be a lot of you're gonna have to prove it rather than the reputation. They don't have the reputation right now of being a team that they think can compete this year.
This is the initial season of the Mike Miller era. We joked there at the beginning of the show because we had Ryan Dinwiddie on the opening. He's now in Ottawa. Now we have a new head coach here in Toronto. We don't know what this team's going to look like. In all honesty, looking back, we don't really know what a Ryan Dinwiddie team was going to look like after the first couple of years. So Argo fans are going to deal with the same. I don't know, how's this season going to go? And I think what one has to do, and I don't think we have any choice in the matter, David, and that is that you've got a new head coach coming in a very unique situation that's disadvantageous to the organizational part of putting a team together, because their head office and all that is in Toronto. I mean, they literally have to split themselves between another city in Ontario and Toronto. Considering the way it was before, they would practice at Lamport. They could walk from Lamport to, BMO Field. And so to suggest this isn't inconvenient would be disingenuous on our part. But what I will say, because I don't want to sound negative, but what I will say is this helps forge the team and gives them an opportunity to be motivated to work that much harder to make this team successful.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do think that there is, I see this situation as there are benefits in terms of, your surroundings each and every day. The people within the organization, they're making it work a lot better because, they at least know where they're going to be stationed every week, right? They know, they're at Guelph. Everything's set up for them. It's theirs. There's not going to be any disruptions because it's not the school year. So they're not worrying about, that sort of issue where you're kind of working against other people being there. Like they have the area to themselves. No one's bothering them really. Um, it's also the players are closer together now, right? They're not scattered across the city. A lot of them are going to be probably staying together, from what I've heard. Some of them are going to be staying in dorms, so they're going to make the situation work. Um, it's just there's gonna be an adjustment, but this is only going to be until August, right? August it'll go back to being what's normal, I guess, for them. But even the normal, as you said, isn't exactly, you know, ideal either, because they're constantly having to go bus to the locker room, bus to the field, and things like that. So they're used to doing things a bit of a little bit differently. Let's just say.
Well, if you're an Argo fan, you have this big situation, which is it isn't. The funny thing is, it isn't unique. Around 10 years ago, Argo fans went through the same thing where their team didn't have a home and they played a lot of their games on the road. Their home games were on the road. So Argo fans are accustomed, at least in the long term, to something like this. And it's something that they're going to deal with now. Plus the rest of the stuff that seems to be concerning the general CFL fans, just to remind folks that while the Argo fans are dealing with this issue, and it's a big one, they also have concerns about rule changes, which, those rule changes, we're going to benefit from them, I guess, understanding them, because so early in the season, most of these games that we're going to see are going to be on television, because we're not going to be able to fly to Saskatchewan or Winnipeg or drive to Hamilton.
Yeah.
So a lot of what we're going to understand, Argo fans and Argo reporters that don't follow the team closely, what we're gonna learn is basically what the experts are saying on TV, and whether you want to refer to them as spin doctors or people who are just speaking frankly, that's up to everybody to make their own decision. I just know that I'm going to be spending a lot more time watching the game on TV and getting the television version of the Argos, and I'm just wondering, will that at least create an appetite once August comes around and they start showing up at home, David? That's the other challenge with this season.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be challenges, right? There. I don't know how. I didn't check to see how the schedule kind of works out, where they come back. Is it like a seamless transition? Is there going to be a bit of is there going to be a bit of a adjustment period for them to get back back to what's normal for them? I didn't really check that part, but from what I can see, like they understand that this is a situation that has been thrown at them. They've had to deal with it. They have to learn to accept it, and they're making the best of it. Like, I think Mike Miller said that they were. It was a story actually about Mike Miller on Sportsnet from my colleague, Mike Kareen, and he talked about how he takes a lot of what he learned from Bill Cowher from the Steelers, and how he keeps the team together during this sort of a season like this. It's his first year. That's probably if I'm the Argos, and if I'm an Argo fan, I'm thinking less about the adversity of being the road team for the first 2 months of the year. And I'm thinking more about how is my team going to react to a new person in charge, right? Because that to me is a bigger situation to have to kind of deal with, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It becomes more of a, can our team rise above, what's going to be probably there's going to be challenges, no doubt. There's going to be challenges throughout this.
As far as the coaching is concerned, and the relationship between the coaches and themselves and the players, compartmentalizing is going to be a very important function for this team, because there's so many different directions that they're doing differently. What I can say about what I believe that might bring this team together is the idea that they want to be physical. In other words, they're going to play an emotional game. Now, I know, penalties might become a concern when it comes to playing emotionally or physically, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how the physical part of the game, which Mike Miller is going to be promoting, helps, in getting this team together. Because one of the things that they can key on is they can concentrate on the fact that, hey, we're in a real tough situation. We need to go out there and kick butt. We need to go out there and take it out on them. We're going to have a tougher season. We need to take it out on them, on the opposition. If they can spin that little wheel a little bit and make it an us and them situation, David, and if they have the characters within the locker room, they're missing one really important character who went to Hamilton. That, to me, is going to be the biggest challenge, to see who arises out of that locker room and, within the team, that are the ones that motivate the team, the team leaders. This is an opportunity for players, that were not here, to immediately be impactful in that regard, and the ones that have been here that maybe were not at the front when it came to motivating their teammates. This is an opportunity for some players that otherwise wouldn't get.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if you've looked at the starting depth chart that's been thrown out there. There's going to be some players that are going to be different. It's funny because it looks like a different team, but it's not really a different team. I look at the receivers. There's one new starting receiver. That's also because Jake Herzlow is hurt. You look at running back position. That's the one thing that's different. Two new tackles on the offensive line. On the defense, you got a new defensive tackle, Toyoa. I have to get the pronunciations from the Argos on this. Largely, it's a pretty recognizable team. There have been changes made, and they're hoping that these changes will have, the impact expected, right? But, I also think that, this is one of those situations where it's going to take time for this team to really establish themselves. I really do. It's going to take some time for this team to gel in some ways. But I think if you have to be kind of, sometimes teams like that. They like to be the underdog. They like that mentality. So very interested to see how that will work out.
They definitely have an opportunity for that. And on the good news front, they've got their number one quarterback ready to go. We'll find out how rusty Kelly is, but he has a lot of help out there in receiver land, in Unger, Coxey, and Polk. We all remember Polk being the impactful player that helped the Argos win a Grey Cup. He came here late last season, David, and I don't think he got a chance to get into the rhythm. I just don't feel like he didn't look comfortable. He arrived here at the end of the season and didn't look comfortable. Coxey and Unger, two different kinds of receivers. Unger is going to be somebody that, I think the way Kelly plays is going to be very important. Him being that safety valve.
I'll tell you this: the Argos have a very they've always had, in my opinion, they've had an underrated receiver room. In my opinion, they've always had decent receivers, but I don't think they've had this deep of a receiver room in terms of with the quarterback as part of it. I do think that there is going to be some, as you said, there's going to be some adjustments because you do have a quarterback that hasn't played in a long time that's going to have to show now that he is not only healthy but also ready to be getting back to the level. It's one thing for Chad Kelly to come back and be Chad Kelly. He's now got to come back. Sorry, it's one thing for Chad Kelly to come back and play. He's going to have to now come back and play at the level that is expected of him. And we know that that expectation is to be a MOP candidate quarterback.
And to get there, there has to be a plan in place to highlight his best qualities and hide his worst qualities, right? So now, having said that, he's lucky that he has somebody that has been the biggest part of his success now, even more deeply involved in making decisions that could be beneficial for Kelly, and that is Coach Mike Miller, who, from the moment that they both work together, they've worked some pretty good magic. I think that's the question that, or the hope I think that Argo fans will have, and the organization is hoping that those two guys can expand on the great successes that they helped create, and hopefully, you know, mitigate these injuries that I don't know if it changes anything going into this year compared to the last few years. Is there going to be a little more of a conservative attitude when it comes to not putting himself in danger? Unfortunately, that's almost, David, counterintuitive to how Kelly plays. That's the other question I have. How free will he be to take the high risks that he's taken from the moment he stepped on the CFL field on behalf of the Argos?
From what I can tell, like Mike Miller doesn't think Chad's going to play any differently. Um, I think they're going to trust him to do what they think he can do. Um, but I do think that there's going to be some, there's going to be some rust. But yeah, I think you're right. The way he responds to it, that's going to be crucial. Can he, if he has a bad throw, a bad turnover, we know that when healthy, it's sunk him before, right? He's had to overcome those mistakes, and it hasn't been easy for him to do that. So that's the part for me is it's less about his ability on the like it's not much about his physical ability too. There's a mentality, there's a mental part of it too, right? Is he going to play a little differently because a guy's coming in on a hit and he's gotta think about the decision he's making, right? Those are the sort of things I think way more, in my opinion, than can he get out on the field? So I think he's cleared, he's healthy. That's the first hurdle he had to overcome. The other hurdle now he has to overcome is, can he translate that to success on the field?
And the question is, what kind of distraction will his relationship with the media be? I mean, it's obvious to anybody who follows the Argos at all that Kelly has a confused relationship with the media, and the media has a confused relationship about him and with him, which I think has to do more with the circumstances that he found himself in under injury situation. The team does not, the team did not, in my opinion, David, hindsight being the benefit here, hindsight, that it doesn't seem like they handled his injury last year in a way that went from point A to point Z. It hopped around a lot, and a lot of questions were asked where answers weren't given, assumptions were made, and I think that created a lot of I don't know. I really believe that Kelly needs to flush all that and just think about what he is as a quarterback. If he wants to use the media as a motivational tool, get after it. Go ahead, do that. I just don't think it's to his benefit, and I don't think it's to the organization's benefit as well. I think they need to somehow figure out, the relationship as a quarterback. I know people will say, well, it has nothing to do with him being, but it does. It does. I just think one of the things that has to happen is there has to be a kind of distraction free media relationship. And I really think there are too many distractions. I'm not putting any blame here, David. I'm just saying that it played out that way. That's what it looked like because the media was asking questions. The team was saying things that changed from time to time. There didn't seem to be a consistent understanding or a flow in regards to the return of, Kelly. And I suppose some of that might be because the team, the season went south at the end there. If you remember, there was talk about him coming back, and then that didn't happen. And I think some of it had to do with the fact that the more useless the season became, the more of a losing season it became, the less the Argos wanted to risk, injury to Kelly, which I don't blame him for that, but that's all part of the overall picture.
Sorry, I do think that they need to look at how they can, keep the attention on the right parts. Because last year, that was a big problem, and I agree. A lot of the circus came around. Is he going to play? Will he play? Is he going to practice? Will he practice? Is he going to come back this year? Will he cut? Like, there was a lot of that, and that was a distraction that didn't need to happen. Then when he goes out and he says certain things, guess what? He's gonna have to. Those are things he said. And he's gonna have to answer for it, right? I do think that there's maybe I wouldn't say unfair, but I do think that he gets pushed more because of what's happened in the past with him. But you have to you have to accept that. You have to accept that that's the situation, and you're gonna have to. It's something you have to either embrace, or it's going to be something that's going to, it's going to be something that's going to be a problem, for sure.
And then I guess the overriding issue that I think is like the moon, above the earth. If the Argos are the earth, the moon is the part where interest in the team, right? Needs to be more about the team and how they're playing, less about do they have their starting quarterback. So if they can get into that zone where it's about the game, not about the individuals, which I think is a responsibility of the organization to do as much as they can to use the individuals as a selling point, but not a debate as to how the season can go better. At the end of the day, the organization has to have a plan in place. This quarterback has to be really good. He has to do something that offers an opportunity for this team this year to make the playoffs. I don't think not making the playoffs this year would sit well with Argo fans, considering the situation that they're living in right now, which makes it kind of unfair. They're handicapped this season. And if they don't have a good season, it's going to hurt them because of what happened last year and how they regressed. So for now, we've got good receivers. We've talked about them. The defense, I think, David, is the thing that the Toronto Argonauts, need to be better at. Last year, if anything failed them more than anything, it was their defense.
Yeah, I know the defense was a big problem last year. Yes, the offense had their struggles. Nick Arbuckle had a lot of turnovers to start the year, but you know why Nick Arbuckle had a lot of turnovers? Because Nick Arbuckle was being forced to play in a way to try to get his team back into a game because they were in a hole, because the defense struggled to make stops. So if I'm the Argos, if their defense does not now. The CFL is kind of an interesting thing because you got teams that try to mimic each other, but they also tried, you also are trying to play your style to your strengths. This team's strength is their offense. So how do the Argos find success that way? Is by their defense playing good. Doesn't have to be great. Doesn't have to be elite. It would be great if they played elite. They don't have to be, but they're going to have to play good. They can't be below average because then that puts your offense in a very tough bind. It puts your offense behind. It puts your offense in a position where they're going to have to do more than what's expected. They're going to have to take risks. Chad Kelly is going to feel that he needs to do things beyond what he's supposed to do. Nick Argos did it. Didn't really work. They couldn't run, and it's really but they couldn't run the ball. Well, also the play calling dictated when you're down 14. Let's say 14-0. You can't just run the ball, and guess what? The other teams kind of know that as well.
And when you talk about the defense, one of the reasons why the Argos defense has to be better is because the three different things that make up a football team, they have to be better in all three. They just have to be better in all three. Why? Because every year the Eastern Division's been getting tougher and tougher and tougher. And now you've got a Montreal team that's playing that will play. I'm going to make this prediction. A Montreal team that will play as good as they've ever played in the past few years. And they've got a team in Hamilton has rediscovered itself and its game with a quarterback who's rediscovered himself and an organization that is starting to gain some confidence in the way they're playing. Now, they lost to Montreal last week, Hamilton. But Montreal showed us why they're going to be dangerous. I mean, they're in mid-season form already, David. This is the challenge the Argos have, and Hamilton for that matter, and why, for the Argos to make it to the playoffs, it's not going to be that easy this year because we all know already that the West has a lot going on. So that crossover thing could happen again. And that's the thing that the Argos and Argo fans don't want to see happen. They want a shot at the Grey Cup. There's no guarantees that you win the Grey Cup, even if you finish first, even if you have home field in the playoffs. Because in the Grey Cup, it's win a couple of games, and guess what? You might have yourself a ring.
And look, the Alouettes, we know right now that Davis Alexander is the real deal. When healthy, he's an MOP candidate. Well, Levi Mitchell, he played pretty well last week. He had a mistake on the interception, right? But he played well enough for his team to win. So for Toronto, yeah, the crossover remains a big thing because, I mean, that's the reason why they didn't make the playoffs last year. There was a crossover that led to Winnipeg taking that spot, right? So Toronto can't sit back and say, okay, if we're like 500, if we're 9-9, we're good. No, you can't, because Winnipeg looks good. Calgary, even though they lost, they still look pretty good. Edmonton, they want to show that they're ready. Like they're every team in the West feels like they could probably go and be a playoff team.
Calgary was great. They just looked like they ran out of gas by the time the season ended.
Yeah, and even that game, Winnipeg found a way at the end there. BC, Saskatchewan, there's no weak link in the West, which means the East has to be on its P's and Q's.
BC is elite if they want to be. They're the one team I'll say that about. It depends on what they want and what they do. I mean, they are, if their heads are in the right place, if that organization is doing what they need to do, they've got all the makings of a Grey Cup champion. So, that's just when you've got the Grey Cup champion Saskatchewan that have been building to that for years and now reach that goal and succeeded. You've got Winnipeg and Calgary, former greats, Winnipeg more recently, that are starting to really look like they could compete as well. That's going to be a death division. I mean, the new alignment is not coming too late for the Western Division. They're probably wishing the new alignment started this year, not next year.
Yeah. Like to me, Ottawa, I know a lot of people are high on Ottawa because of the changes they made this offseason, but I don't know. It's going to be tough to put your trust behind Ottawa, in my opinion, because They made the decision to go with a different starting quarterback, right? Jake Maier's the guy now. And I know their first game was the rain really hurt them.
And it rained.
Yeah,
Wow.
like the rain wasn't good. So I'll give a pass for a week. I didn't think Jake Maier was terrible. I didn't think he was great. I don't know if it's going to take time for Ottawa to get there. And so if you're Toronto, if we're going to bring this back to Toronto, you need to either prove that you're better than Hamilton, because Montreal right now looks like the best team in that division still. You either have to prove you're better than Hamilton, which is not going to be easy because Bo Levi Mitchell's playing really well, or you got to be better than that crossover team in the West, and that's not going to be
Absolutely.
easy.
Absolutely. You got to be better than Ottawa and better than the worst teams in the Western Division.
And you're going to have teams in the West you're going to be playing an extra game in Saskatchewan, an extra game in Winnipeg. Those are games that are going to mean a lot. Like when the season, those games are not not going to be easy. Those are not going to be easy games, and it's going to mean a lot when every game. I think it's going to. I don't know if you can have. Oh, you know what? Just one of those games where it just didn't work for us.
Well,
Well,
when you talk about Saskatchewan, I'm not happy how that works. You asked earlier about what happens when the Argos finally assume their home, right? Well, they end up going on the road to Saskatchewan. I mean, why wasn't the road game to Saskatchewan the previous game? Seems counterintuitive to me that the second game that the Argos play against Saskatchewan, they play their home game first in Saskatchewan, and then they're going to go on the road. I don't know why they couldn't have worked out making that a home game. I just don't understand that. But that's just me not there, with all the information required to make these decisions.
yeah. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how they pull this off in terms of the like it's going these early games. I asked Mike Miller at practice, how much of the start to games is a big part of your game plan. And he's like, well, the problem is it's all about how you start, but it's also about how you finish. You can't focus on one sector of one part of the game. You have to be dialed in through all four quarters.
Absolutely.
And this is a team that made moves, and I talked to them. I said, well, it looks like you guys did not only brought you brought players back that feels like you're not having to integrate too many, like
Absolutely.
back into the fold. It's like, well, yeah, that was part of it, but it was also to get good players back. So they're not just doing it for the sake of just adding players.
No, the Argos right now, they're. If we talk a little bit about who's running the team, we have one less person getting players for the Argos. Have you seen anything different because of the upper management changes, David, in your mind?
No, like obviously Huffnagel's there, and Jashawn Amos talked about how having Huffnagel was nice to have another familiar person within the fold. Jim Barker, obviously. I mean, they got some other people working there as well. I know they added some scouts to the team as well. So I do think about you're adding people who have done it, who've been there and done it, right? So Huffnagel for sure. Their scouting staff has changed. They added a new pro scout coordinator who's done a lot of work within Guelph, actually, from the league office. So he's got a lot of experience with I think Jim Barker was talking about Afram Jolak. A lot of experience with league contracts and procedures and stuff. So they have somebody who's big on that part. They also added a new scout in Nate Bickford, who was working both in BC and Ottawa. So it wasn't just about rebuilding the roster; it was also to get the front office kind of working more seamlessly again.
And especially having a management team that understands the cause and effect of the calendar moving past Labor Day. You know, that they've got time. The good news is that's a more impactful time of the year, or as impactful as the off season, which means this organization and the people they have at the top can get prepared for that part and be, you know, hitting the ground running at that time. Because a lot of success that teams have had over the years is how they deal from that point of bringing players in or releasing players. You know, when you talk about scouts, that's a time of the year where, you know, the cuts in the NFL become a factor, possibly here in Toronto. I think the biggest thing that I think they'll have to do, and that is a lot of these players that have gone to the NFL, is it possible they can interrupt their return to their original team and come to Toronto? Toronto's got to improve their Canadian talent, David. What do you see as their Canadian talent is concerned, and the people in charge of unearthing the best of the Canadians available?
Yeah, I mean that's something that every team, if you want to be a really good CFL organization, you got to get the most out of your Canadians. I thought, you know, when Vince Magri was poached by the Bills, that was a huge loss for this organization. And so they needed to find a way to, you know, get back to that. Adding the experience of Huffnagel, not just for pinball, but for Mike Miller as well, somebody that they can really lean on. I think that's huge. Barker, to me, I think his benefit will help in terms of organizing what's needed and putting the priorities in place. Yes, he's going to do some scouting. He's going to do a lot of the scouting work, and I think that's where, you know, his experience. He's been watching, you know, a lot of that stuff. So, and pinball is always still around. He can kind of help keep things on the day to day, while the other people that they have employed can go and do the work that they need to do without having to worry about the team's day to day as well.
Yeah, the pinball, as always, is the team leader, the conduit to ensure that all the parts function well together. He has nothing but a reputation of being a team player. And, you know, team playing isn't just something players do on the field. It's what management does off the field as well. And part of the reason why, you know, having the experienced people they've brought in is not just because of who they know, but who they know. You know, it is networking, and it's being able to get that spider web, you know, as intricate as it can be, and far-reaching and in different circles all at once. And that's why to have people like Barker in here is important. This organization doesn't suffer the ability to pay for really good talent, but it does suffer one of your favorite problems, which is the management cap. So, you know, that's something that they have to deal with. But like you said, they've got a guy coming from the Canadian Football League who may understand the ins and outs of the difficulties and or the solutions to problems that might come up. It's going to be interesting. I guess the most important thing that we can talk about is what will make this Argo team in your mind exciting? What will make it worth going to buy a ticket or to turn on the TV in your mind?
To me, it's the offense and a more physical style of football. I just think a very a very big emphasis this offseason was about being a more physical team, but being a team that's going to be relentless. Like I asked Deshaun Amos, we've heard a lot about physicality, but what's another word you'd use? And he says relentless, right? I do think that there's still a bit of that old identity that's still there. So they haven't completely turned away from what's been successful the last few years. But I do think that there is going to be the offense is going to be what's going to drive this team. First, I just constantly say it. It's always going to be the offense. It's what's going to make or break this team. And I do think that they're in a good spot to have all that.
And the defense has to be competitive with the other defense. In other words, keep the offense off the field as much as the other team keeps their offense off the field. They can't have this every time the ball gets exchanged. There's a disadvantage for the quarterback in Toronto.
Yeah.
Field position is very important. Their kick return game was not that good last year. You talked about the running game. The running game is very important. We've seen it just in the first weekend of games. We saw how important the running game is. Look at Rankin. What does a team need? Edmonton has Rankin, and that guy on his own is an offense, and it speaks to how important the quarterback can be, because having a running game and not having the rest is not as good as it could be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I think what they are going to have to make sure is that it's not all on Chad Kelly's shoulders. Last year, Nick Arbuckle had a lot put on his shoulders, and I do think that that's going to have to be the big change. Is they're going to have to make sure that other parts of the team step up, and I do think the defense is going to, and they will get a lot of the attention. But that's just kind of the way things go. The defense wasn't good enough. They knew it. That's why they made changes, right? New defensive coordinator and coaches too. Like, it's not just players that change, coaches too. So it's good. I'm curious to see how that will all put together. How quickly does it come together?
The aggressiveness is the key. If they can be, to be honest, David, it was the aggressiveness and the relentlessness, using those same words, that were the definition of the defenses under Mace. We may not have heard those words back then, but they describe what was going on back then, and defenses have to be like that. Noel, I mean, look at his Montreal. They're the same thing. They're relentless, right? And they're punishing, and that's what you need to be in football. Football's a physical sport, and and the biggest thing that everybody talks about is winning in the trenches. That is one of the weaknesses the Argos had, is their offensive and defensive lines were not as good as championships require, and that's something that's going to be interesting. We'll see how their lines work, because that's another reason why a team wins or loses, right? Because that's a lot of the battles are won right there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do think that they were giving up too many sacks. They weren't getting the running game going, and their defense line wasn't getting to the quarterback.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, for a first show back, David, this was awesome. In conclusion, we haven't talked about rule changes. We had a chance to talk about those before. Right now, today, I'm more concerned with what the game will look like tomorrow. And Argo fans, I think they have no idea what their team's going to look like, David. I don't know how long it's been, probably since the first year of Ryan Dinwiddie. I don't think it's a coincidence that it's the first year of Miller. This is when Argo fans are going to be watching, and those of us judging them or reporting on them. This team could look like anything. I don't think there's any idea of what this team can look like. We can assume some things. If Kelly plays at the rate that he can play, if he plays his best football, he'll carry this team. But the question is, how will the rest of the team do? And these are the things that we don't know yet. And that's what makes the new season really interesting. And, there's no reason to say, well, they're not making the playoffs. This is the one time every team gets to say, before they play their first game, before the season starts, hope should spring eternal. So the hope for Argo fans, David, is that their quarterback plays well, their defense and offense improves compared to last year, and most of all, we don't miss watching this team play live, which is, the one thing that can't change. That's a definite, is that not watching this team play live for the fans is going to go for a little while, till August. unless you
No.
want to pay airfare or drive to Hamilton, of course.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Right.
At least there's that. At least they can go to Hamilton.
Yeah.
If you want to make the drive.
If you want to. And Montreal this week is not that far a drive. If you want to watch the Argos in person, you can go to Montreal. So, there is that. It's just not the normal way you watch your team play. That's going to take a while. And I'm interested to see how this organization reacts to that situation. I'm dying to see how it plays out. It'll be very interesting, to say the least. So you're looking forward to following some games, David?
That's why I can't wait. I hate, as much as I like talking about the games, the best thing is watching them.
Absolutely. He's David Morisuti. I'm Candid Frank Stanishi. I want to thank you for watching, everybody. We'll see you again next week. The show will drop on Fridays. That's our plan, and we'll record them, and then hopefully the next day they'll drop for you to watch. So thank you for tuning in, everybody. Hope you enjoy this CFL season, and there's a lot of different ways to enjoy it. You can go to cfl.ca and you can find out the different ways you can watch if you're not a local Canadian or a local Toronto person. Enjoy the football, everybody. Enjoy the season. I wish you all the best as well. Good health to everyone. Have a great day.